Hello and welcome, I'm Joshua Barnes and you're watching The World Report. So let's first take a look at some of the headlines. In the first public conversation since October 2024, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and US President... I know, but it's in the read, isn't it? Hello and welcome, I'm Joshua Barnes and this is The World Report. In the first public conversation since October 2024, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and US President Joe Biden held telephone conversations. This discussion focused on the progress made in the negotiations and the release of hostages. Netanyahu has updated Biden on his directives given to Doha negotiations team. He also congratulated him for the commitment to what he called the holy mission. The White House said Biden discussed the fundamentally changed regional circumstances following Israel's ceasefire with Hezbollah in Lebanon. Recently, President Biden had made his remarks on the ceasefire talks. Let's listen in.
We're making some real progress. I met with negotiators today. I'm still hopeful that we'll be able to have a prisoner exchange. Hamas is the one getting in the way of that exchange right now. But I think we may be able to get that done. We need to get it done. We're making some real progress.
This comes a day after Netanyahu sent a top Israeli security delegation to indirect negotiations in Qatar's capital. The negotiations, mediated over the past year by the US, Egypt and Qatar, have repeatedly stalled at moments when they seemed close to a deal. Still, in recent days, US officials have expressed hope of sealing an agreement. Meanwhile, the humanitarian crisis in Gaza continues to deepen. Recent Israeli airstrikes targeted the Salah al-Din school and the Shujaiya neighbourhood in Gaza City, killing several Palestinians. We'll first go to our correspondent, Aditya Wadwan. Aditya, this again is a signal that the relationship between Joe Biden and the US and Israel in the form of Benjamin Netanyahu is strong. We've seen Biden recently talk about military aid. Can you please sort of continue to talk about the relationship that the two countries have and how that might move forward with the Trump administration? We are now joined by a guest. We start off with Yossi Kupawasa, who's an Israeli intelligence and security expert live from Tel Aviv. Yossi, thank you very much for joining me. Reports coming out of the US at least is that a ceasefire deal is close. If that's the case, why are the Israeli strikes continuing to hit northern Gaza? We've seen a school has been struck within the last 24 hours with over 25 deaths recorded.
Good afternoon. We don't attack schools. The situation in Gaza is that schools and other civilian facilities are being used by Hamas as headquarters and positions for the terror operatives. And we attack the terror operatives after making efforts to make sure that the collateral damage will be minimal. And that's what's happening for quite a while. They keep using pharmacies, hospitals, whatever, in order to hide and believe that this can give them some immunity, which it doesn't. And the war in Gaza goes on. That's why we are talking about a ceasefire. We want to see a ceasefire that would make sure that our hostages will come back home, and that's the main purpose of ceasefire from our point of view. We have to remember that this is all following what happened on 7th of October 2023, when we had 250 Israelis abducted by Hamas and 1,200 killed, massacred. So that's where we stand, and we have to make sure that with our operations we don't suffer more terrorism from this group dominating Gaza.
Yossi, in terms of Hamas, they've mentioned that 34 hostages could be released in a potential ceasefire deal. In Israel, and as an Israeli, does that go far enough?
So it's the first stage that goes enough. We are talking about 34 living hostages that have to be released in the first stage of this deal. The question mark is about how clear is the second stage. First stage is more or less agreed upon, but the question is what kind of relationship is there between this first stage and the next stage, because we want to make sure that all the hostages are going to come back home safely. Definitely those who are still alive. We have more than 30 out of 98 that are still in the hands of Hamas. More than 30 are dead probably, and we don't know the fate of all the others. Some of them are living and some of them are unclear. The situation is unclear. That's where we stand, and we hope that all of them will be released.
We're also joined by Professor A.K. Pasha, an international affairs expert. Professor Pasha, thank you for joining us. Looking at the situation in Lebanon between Hezbollah and Israel, there has been a ceasefire that is held. Do you think any potential ceasefire deal that is struck between Hamas and Israel will follow a similar path? And do you think it will be similar in the way that Israeli forces will retreat slowly?
The Israeli-Lebanese conflict played up because Hezbollah was demanding a ceasefire in Gaza. And since Hezbollah took a heavy toll, and there was pressure not only from the United States, France, and other Western countries, but also interested regional parties, also Arab countries, put pressure on Hezbollah to agree for a ceasefire. Whereas in Hamas, you see, the Hamas has shown flexibility on a number of occasions, at least 3, if I recall. Just before the American elections, we were told that it is very near, and before that also. But the stumbling block was the Israeli Prime Minister, who would raise any number of issues like the Philadelphia corridor or dismantling of the Hamas to end the war, and all sorts of excuses the Israeli Prime Minister was highlighting. So with the result, and also his personal agenda about the court cases and corruption cases, so on and so forth. So now that the new American president is going to take charge, and he had fixed January 20 as the de facto deadline, and more importantly, Trump's envoy, Steve Witkoff, also has been playing a very important role to get this ceasefire deal, along with Biden's envoy, Brett McGurk. So all these two, plus the Mossad chief and Shin Bet chief, Egyptian intelligence chief, and the personal involvement of Qatari Prime Minister have all been pushing very hard, and it is for the first time that Hamas says the outlook is very promising and that the gaps were being narrowed. And there is a big push, in fact, towards an agreement if all goes well to the end, as they say. So in that way, there is some hope for optimism. But Hamas wants a permanent end to the war and Israeli withdrawal from the Gaza and release of the Palestinian detainees. So these are the sticking points. Israel wants all the hostages which Hamas has taken to be released, whereas Israel doesn't want to release all the thousands of Palestinians who are detained, and large number from the West Bank since the October 23 issue happened in this region. So in that, the maximalist demand from Israel had been torpedoing the deal, ceasefire deal, even though Biden was claiming that we are putting pressure, which was not really a pressure. It was just a smoke screen to enable the elections smoothly for the return of Kamala Harris as the president. So in that way, now that the deadline has been fixed by Donald Trump and he has said a deal has to be done. So Netanyahu is under pressure to oblige, and hopefully this time threat from Trump would materialize, and he will start his new administration with a clean slate to focus more on other issues like Iran, consolidating the temporary ceasefire on Lebanon, and other hotspots which are growing in the Middle East.
Professor A.K. Pasha, I apologise to interrupt you. We are unfortunately out of time. Thank you also to Yossi Kupawasa for joining us. We now move on to the death toll from massive wildfires that have ravaged Los Angeles, which has risen to 24 on Sunday. The official warning of incoming dangerous winds that could whip up the blaze further. Fires continue to spread through the United States' second largest city for 6 days, destroying entire neighbourhoods and leaving thousands homeless, while there are questions being raised that the government, the local authorities and the governor is being heavily scrutinised. No one's claimed the responsibility yet. Here is the report.
Firefighters struggle to make further progress against the devastating wildfire, which has destroyed thousands of homes and killed 24 people in Los Angeles. Winds up to 70 miles per hour mean a particularly dangerous situation will be declared from early Tuesday, said National Weather Service meteorologist Rose Schoenfeld. The firefighters have warned that these gusts could fan flames and whip up embers from existing burn zones into new areas. Meanwhile, there is a massive search for the bodies of the deceased. Teams with cadaver dogs were carrying out grid searches with the grim expectation that the confirmed death toll would rise. A heroic firefighting operation that has operated 24/7 since the first flames erupted was bolstered Sunday with the arrival of crews from Mexico. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky on Sunday even offered to send 150 personnel to California from his war-ravaged country. As per reports, while the ignition of a wildfire can be deliberate, a huge investigation by federal and local authorities was underway to determine what caused the blazes. Meanwhile, the sudden rush of people needing somewhere to live has posed a growing problem for the city. However, the total number of residents under evacuation orders dropped to around 100,000, from a peak of almost 180,000. Bureau Report, NewsX.
Let's now take a look at some news updates from across the continent of Europe. Voters in Croatia have re-elected Zoran Milanovic for a second term. This came as he won almost 3/4 of the votes cast in the country's presidential elections. It was a dismal result for his opponent, Dragan Primorac. Primorac picked up 25% of the vote, the worst ever result for Croatia's most powerful political force. He declined to congratulate the winner and insisted that Milanovic offers nothing. Milanovic said he would offer a hand to the Prime Minister. The French Indian Ocean territory of Mayotte has been hit by further heavy rains, leading to flooding and mudslides. At least 14,500 people have taken refuge in emergency shelters set up to protect them from the storm. The archipelago was put on the highest state of alert on Sunday morning. The prefect said it was likely the island would remain on red alert until Monday evening. This is because of heavy rain, which was expected to continue after the storm had passed. Russia says it has downed 9 Ukrainian drones. These drones tried to attack part of the infrastructure of the Turk Stream gas pipeline through the Russian gas flow to Turkey and Europe. The Russian Defense Ministry said the attack was aimed against a compressor station. Falling fragments from one drone caused minor damage to the building and equipment. However, the facility was working normally and there were no casualties. A nationwide strike in protest against possible pension reforms crippled air and rail traffic in Belgium. Almost half of all flights at Brussels airport were cancelled. This came as luggage handlers, security and other ground staff went on strike. The national train operator said it was running only a limited number of trains throughout the country. Public transport in the capital Brussels was also heavily impacted. Schools were shut, with tens of thousands of teachers expected to join a national rally in Brussels. A man in his 60s has been arrested following the seizure of cannabis. They are worth around £302,000 and they were found at Dublin Airport. The drugs were seized by custom officers after a man was searched at the airport. The man was detained at a police station in the Dublin region. Irish police said the drugs will be sent for forensic analysis and added that investigations are ongoing. A woman who was found dead in County Cavan has been described as a popular, highly regarded woman. It's been said that she worked for the good of the local community. Fianna Fáil politician Brendan Smith said she had been involved over the years in community projects. A murder investigation has been launched after her body was found in County Cavan. She has been named locally as Annie Henneman. The Maha Kumbh 2025 has kicked off in Prayagraj, drawing millions to the sacred Triveni Sangam for the first holy dip. Let's take you there for a closer look.
The Maha Kumbh Mela, the world's largest spiritual gathering, is set to begin in Prayagraj, India, where the Ganga, Yamuna, and Saraswati rivers converge. This historic event, rooted in Hindu mythology, is anticipated to draw nearly 400 million devotees, making it an unparalleled cultural and economic phenomenon. The origins of the Kumbh Mela lie in the ancient Hindu tale of the Samudra Manthan, or the churning of the ocean, where drops of the sacred nectar of immortality spilled across 4 cities: Prayagraj, Haridwar, Ujjain, and Nashik. These places have since become sacred sites for the festival, which rotates among them every 12 years. Prayagraj holds special significance as the site of the Triveni Sangam, a confluence of rivers believed to be imbued with divine power. This year's Mahakumbh is particularly auspicious, with planetary alignments mirroring those from 144 years ago. Astrologers and seers have called this a rare cosmic event.
इससे बड़ी गैदरिंग पूरे विश्व में कहीं नहीं होती है और उससे भी बड़ी बात है कि इसका कोई इनविटेशन किसी को नहीं जाता। पीपल यहाँ पर आते हैं, जो श्रद्धालु आते हैं वो बिना किसी इनविटेशन के या बिना किसी के कहे हुए आते हैं।
Pilgrims flock for the holy dip, believed to wash away sins and bring salvation. But the event also raises concerns about sanitation and river pollution. Experts warn of health risks, overcrowding, and environmental concerns. Past tragedies, like the 1954 stampede, remain stark reminders of the need for meticulous crowd management.
The hygiene of the water was definitely a concern. I even brought it up to my mother. I was like, I don't want to spend too much time, because I've learned about it in school. I've learned about it because I want to be a biologist, doctor type stuff. So I've learned about the parasites and the pollutants that are present within the ecosystem.
The Mahakumbh is not just a spiritual epicenter but an economic juggernaut. With 40 crore attendees expected, experts project an economic impact exceeding 4 lakh crore rupees, bolstered by pilgrim spending and branding opportunities.
हाँ, एक शहर तो यहाँ बसाया ही जाता है उसके निमित्त। जब यहाँ हम लोग एक्सपेक्ट कर रहे हैं पूरे समय में करीब 35 से 40 करोड़ श्रद्धालु यहाँ आते हैं पूरे मेला अवधि में, तो उसमें उनके लिए आने और उनके सकुशल जाने के और उनका एक अनूठा एक्सपीरियंस के लिए शहर को तैयार करना ही पड़ता है। इस मेले में इस बार जो है ये चीज़ें 2.5 साल पहले से करीब तैयारियाँ शुरू हुई हैं, जिसमें प्रयागराज शहर के इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर को स्ट्रेंथन करना रहा।
From steel giants like SAIL supplying 45,000 tonnes of material to global brands allocating over 3,000 crore rupees for marketing, the Mahakumbh is a melting pot of tradition and modern commerce. The Kumbh Mela transcends borders, attracting visitors from around the globe. It is a celebration of faith, unity, and cultural diversity, reflecting India's rich heritage while showcasing its modern capabilities to host an event of such magnitude. A blend of spirituality and modernity, the Mahakumbh Mela stands as a testament to India's unparalleled cultural legacy. Bureau Report, NewsX.
That's all we have time for. We'll be back shortly with more of your latest international news updates.